Welcome back, Tolkien fanatics, to another MESBG video, and today I'll be going over Cavalry. I know a lot of you new players and even some experienced players probably are looking forward to this type of video because Cavalry is very important to the game and also very prevalent in it. You see a lot of armies that either are full cav, have a good portion of their army cav, have a few Cavalry models when it comes to just heroes, and sometimes no cav at all. So that begs the question, what is Cavalry and how useful is it? So I'm going to try and go through this section of the book, and I'm not going to cover everything. I'm going to highlight some of the more important parts of it. So for specific things like descending or climbing stairs or doorways and jumping and leaping, I'll briefly touch those. But I'm going to look more importantly into areas like shooting and dismounting, thrown riders, and fighting with cavalry. So what is a cavalry model? Cavalry model consists of a rider and its mount. Riders who dismount from their steed and mounts that lose their riders and lose that riders are no longer considered to be cavalry models, and they will have replaced their cavalry keyword with the infantry keyword. Additionally, if an infantry model purchases a mount, then whilst they remain mounted, they will replace the infantry keyword with the cavalry keyword. So this is important. Basically, if you have an orc can buy a warg. It's just called a warg rider, but now they are considered a cavalry model. So the best example, of course, is the good old riders of Rohan. A warrior Rohan is just that. And then if you take a rider Rohan, in his points value, he has quote-unquote paid for the horse. So now he becomes a cavalry model. Were he to be unhorsed, exactly as it says, he would revert back to the infantry keyword. So which models can ride? The only models that are able to ride mounts are those who have them listed in their war gear as options. Monster models can never ride ordinary mounts. We'll talk about monsters in another section. There are such things as monstrous mounts, and they actually change the way cavalry works. So who sees rider or mount? I think this is important just because of the fact that it may be a minor thing, but line of sight is very important for this game. You have to have line of sight to pretty much do anything. To see, to charge, to cast spells, to shoot. So very important. I know I said to see at the very beginning of that. My bad. In the case of a cavalry model, as the rider is directing their mount, line of sight is always taken from the perspective of the rider and is never blocked by the mount. This is important for establishing whether a model has line of sight to an enemy they are about to charge or intend to shoot. And also for spell casting, because you have to have line of sight for casting spells. But we'll talk about magic too in the future. So cavalry movement, let's move into that. I think the biggest important thing about this is difficult terrain. So I just wanted to cover this. Basically, for every inch you move in difficult terrain, it costs you 4 inches. Yeah. So most cavalry models have 10 inches of movement. So the example they have is the orc warrior mounts onto a warg. Orc warrior now has the warg's movement of 10 inches. So if that warg were warg and orc, we're just going to say warg rider for simplicity's sake, were to move through difficult terrain, every inch they move counts as 4 inches. So that really, really sucks. They say a little bit different. It says every half inch you move, it costs 2 inches of movement. So basically, if you move 2.5 inches, you have used all 10 inches of your movement as a warg rider moves 10 inches. So you have to be really careful about difficult terrain, and there is some things out there that help you ignore difficult terrain. Fleetfoot is one of them, where usually I'm thinking about woodland creature here. Woodland creature allows you, or Fleetfoot allows you to transfer woodland creature to a mount. Therefore, you would ignore woodland terrain as difficult terrain. Okay? So otherwise, jumping, leaping, descending, stairs, doorways, all that. Like the next 2 pages I'm not really looking at. Excuse me. That's just very specific stuff that you can take a look at yourself. Let's see. So cavalry models and courage tests. Ordinarily, when you are required to take courage tests with a cavalry model, only the rider and not the mount needs to pass a courage test. This is important due to the fact that they are considered one profile, and since the or one model, not one profile. I'm sorry, one model, You can use the better of the two characteristics between the two profiles. They share the profile. Since, for example, a warg is strength 4. So when you go into combat, a regular orc is strength 3. When you do strikes in combat, you would actually be able to strike with the strength of 4. But for the courage test, since that's what I'm talking about specifically right now, the rider is the one to take the courage test because you are, as the rider, directing the horse. So separated mounts. In the thick of fray, a cavalry rider and their mount fight as one. When they are separated, however, in most cases the mount will flee. So remounting is impossible. Once a rider and their mount have been separated, they will not be able to become one profile again. They will stay separated. There are some instances, like warg riders, if the two get separated, say the warg gets killed, the rider gets killed, the warg can take a courage check, and he'll actually be able to stay. And this is important because that's actually covered here in the next section. So moving along, let's talk about cavalry and shooting. So shooting at cavalry. When shooting at a cavalry model, a successful shoot roll might hit either the rider or the mount. Because of this, the mount is treated as if they were in the way of the rider, and the rider is treated as being in the way of the mount. Each time one of your shots hits a cavalry model, roll a d6. On a 1 through 3, the mount is hit, while on a 4 through 6, the rider is hit. You must always target the model as a whole. You cannot normally target either part specifically. Now it says you cannot normally target. There are a couple specific profiles out there that can allow you to do that. Legolas being one of them with his instant shot on a 2+, can choose to particularly or specifically pick the rider or the mount. So there you go. If a mount is slain, then the rider takes a thrown rider tech, which is a d6, and then consults the chart. So on a 1, you're knocked flying. The rider hits the dirt and immediately suffers 1 strength 3 hit. If they survive, the model is prone and can do nothing else that turn. This includes moving, shooting, making strikes, and casting magical powers. If the mount survives, place the rider in base contact with the mount instead of in the center of where its base was. If there is enough room, move the models apart a little to make it so. If engaged in combat, they fight as a prone model. So that last bit there about the model still being alive, that is talking mainly, again, like the warg riders. Regular horses that, men ride, so we're talking about knights in Minas Tirith, Rohan riders, any hero mounted on a horse. Horses will flee instantaneously. I think that's discussed somewhere, but I'm not 100% sure. It doesn't really say so far, not from what I've come through. I'm trying to look to see, but I haven't seen it so far. Basically, once you're dismounted, a horse will flee the battlefield. So that is important to know. There are a few types of different steeds. You've got horse, armored horse, pony, warg, fell warg. They all have a different profile, and all those profiles are in here. So cavalry and fights. So this is the important one. This is where it gets to the part where I've been talking about. A cavalry model is one model that shares two profiles. So the examples they give are a knight of Minas Tirith on a horse. Well, the strength of the horse is 3, as is the strength of the knight of Minas Tirith, which is the warrior. So it doesn't really matter who you use there for the strength because they're the same. Conversely, they also use an orc warrior and a warg, where again, as I said earlier, the orc warrior is strength 3 and the warg is strength 4. So you get to use the better of the fight value, or the strength there, which would be the strength of 4 when doing damage. So charging with cavalry is definitely the best thing to do, and this is why I always think you should have your heroes mounted, because the amount of damage you can do with a cavalry model is ridiculous if you can get it to work properly. So one of the greatest advantages of riding a steed into battle is that a fighter on a powerful mount is very difficult to stop. The sheer weight and momentum of a mounted attack will often bowl the enemy to the ground. There are 2 rules that reflect this, with the extra strike and the knock to the ground ability. So these bonuses are granted regardless of the number of enemy models you charge, so long as they are all infantry models. This bonus applies even if other enemies that are infantry subsequently charge the cavalry model. Those bonuses do not apply when charging cavalry models, though, or if you're countercharged by a cavalry model. So basically, you charging against infantry, more infantry charges you. You maintain your bonus for your extra attack and knock to the ground. You charge a cavalry, you lose the extra attack and knock to the ground ability. Conversely, if you charge infantry and are countercharged by cavalry, you also lose the extra attack and knock to the ground ability. So the extra attack, a cavalry model with this bonus gains 1 additional attack when making duel rolls and when making strikes in the following fight. So a model with 1 attack rolls 2 dice when making a duel roll. A model with two attacks rolls 3 dice, and so on and so forth. Note that even if the rider is using the attack value of their mount, they still get the additional attack. So that last little bit there is actually important when you're talking about Fell Beasts and Nazgul, because Nazgul, Ringwraiths, they only have 1 attack base, but the Fell Beast itself has 2. So if you charge with a Fell Beast, it is considered a mount, and it's a monstrous mount, which I said earlier we'll talk about later. I just wanted to cover this really quick since it's in here. So the Fell Beast has 2 attack space, and then when it charges into a infantry model, it would get 3, since it gets the extra attack. Knocked to the ground. If a cavalry model with this bonus wins a fight, all of their opponents are knocked to the ground, except for monster models or models with a strength of 6 or more. So I talked about heroic actions in another video, and this is just a caveat to that. Sometimes using a heroic strength, if you're a hero and you've been charged by an enemy cavalry model, can be very useful, because if you can get that D3 to your strength, which means you need a 3 through 6 if you're a hero with a strength of 4, and you can buff your strength to strength 6, you're not knocked prone. It says so right here. And heroic strength will make that work. So that's very important to know. A model that is knocked to the ground is knocked prone after backing away. This means they will also be trapped, as described for rules in prone models. So if you're prone, you're considered trapped. So this is where knocked to the ground is really powerful. So it says in the extra attack, so a base infantry model gets charged by Rider Rohan. Rider Rohan has 1 attack base. He's charged against infantry. Therefore, he gets the extra attack. Now he's got 2. So he wins the fight against whatever warrior he's fighting. 2 dice to 1. Outdices him. Gets to roll a 6. The other guy doesn't. The other model backs away and then goes prone. So you still keep that extra attack dice that you got to roll. And now since the model is prone, and being prone you're considered trapped, you double your strikes. So now those 2 attacks, 1 being your base, 1 being the extra, become 4 attacks. So take this and just think about using a hero. Think about using somebody like Dane on his pig, who's strength 5 with a 2-handed hammer and burly. Okay? Dane is 3 attacks base. If he charges against an infantry model with his pig, he gets to be 4 attacks. If he wins, the enemy models back away and go prone. And since now they're prone, they're trapped, he's now at 8 attacks. Yes, this is why I think you should always mount your heroes. Now, granted, each one of those strikes is doubled when you allot them to who they're going after. It's not like you can go, oh, I'm up against 6 guys, I'll just roll, oh, I got 6 kills. No, you still have your 4 attacks. When you go and allot it against the prone model, that's when it's doubled. So the most you could kill with a 3-attack hero, a 4-attack hero, when he charges, because that's what he'll become, is 4 guys. However, that's very useful against enemy heroes where you can deal a lot of wounds, or against multi-wound models. So think about going up against a troll. Yes, I know it says the troll does not go prone, but if you could trap a troll, think about it, you would still get 8 attacks, and this is what I've done a number of times with the Riders of Rohan, and you would, because I can trap a troll in using like Eomer and Théoden and a few Riders of Rohan, or a few Royal Guard, so you trap the troll in between, 3 models, and then since the troll is an infantry model, you still get your extra attack, and then you've got them trapped, so now you've doubled. So now it's a 3-wound model, and I'm only using a troll because I can't think of any models other than a troll that have 3 wounds or more, or 2 wounds or more. So that's where it can be useful to throw. Thaden's a 2 attack model, so when he charges against a troll, he'd be 3 attack. Troll's trapped. That's double. That's 6 strikes. So that's really good. That is key. So striking against cavalry models is important. If you win a duel roll against the cavalry model, you may choose to strike either the rider or the mount. This is the choice of the player making the attacks. If they have several attacks to distribute, they can resolve them one at a time in the usual fashion, alternating between rider and mount if they wish. If this slays the mount, a thrown rider test will need to be taken after all strikes have been made. Note that in this case, a mount isn't considered to be in the way, as it is for hits from shooting. Combatants also close enough to place their blows. Combatants are close enough to place their blows with greater accuracy. So you can essentially choose who you're striking, rider or mount. If the rider is slain, their mounts become a separated mount, and there is a chance that it will run away. Again, horses will run. Wargs, you take courage test. If they pass, they stay. If they don't, they flee as well. If the mount is slain after all attacks against the mount and rider have been resolved, the rider must roll on the thrown rider table. So let's go back a little bit here. It says you can delineate where your dice go, either all at once or one at a time. I recommend going one at a time when fighting against cavalry, because it says if you kill the mount, then the rider instantly takes a thrown rider test. This means if he rolls a 1, he will take that strength 3 hit from the rider chart. And I didn't go over the rest of those. My bad. We'll get back to that. He'll take a strength 3 hit, and he will also be prone. That means the rest of your attacks that you have are now doubled because he is trapped. Not a bad strategy to use there. Okay? So let's go back real quick to Thrown Rider test table. I'm sorry, I totally skipped over this because I was talking about it. But I already talked about 1 is not flying. 2 through 5 rise from the dust. The rider disengages themselves from their mount, but can do nothing for that turn. This includes moving, shooting, making strikes, and casting magical powers. 6 leaps into action. The rider bounds from the saddle, ready to face their enemy. The cavalry model is replaced by an infantry model and suffers no further penalty. So that's the Thrown Rider table. Sorry, guys. I'm bouncing around a little bit there. So that's everything up to there. We talked about strikes. I just gave you my little hints on what to do there. So cavalry and magical powers. This is an important one. If a model employs a magical power against a cavalry model, the whole model is considered to be the target of the power. This means that either the rider or the mount can use will points to resist magical powers. And if the power is successful, both feel the effects unless otherwise stated. Okay? So there are a few magical powers out there that do specifically target mount or rider. What is it? Not Enraged Beast. Something that Radagast the Brown cast. It's like Instill Fear, but for mounts. Dang, I can't think of the name. I'm not going to try and look it up right now. But he has the ability to make a mount flee pretty much. And it causes the rider to take a courage test. But otherwise, if you target a cavalry model, both the whole model is targeted. Therefore, it can be resisted by either a rider or the mount. And there are some mounts out there that have will points. So that is key. So the last thing I'm going to talk about here is cavalry and breakpoints. So sometimes for an army, specifically looking at warg armies, because wargs are pretty much the only ones that can stay, you can kill a rider or you can kill a mount, and the other one will stay. So for example, you kill a mount, the rider rolls a 6 for his thrown rider, he's good to go, he's going to keep fighting. Right beside him, his buddy gets killed, but his mount passes the courage check. The warg passes the courage check and stays. So is either model technically slain yet? Well, for kill counts such as Lords of Battle, where you're tallying kills, yes, you do get points for tallying wounds there. However, for break points, since a full model is not killed, neither one of those full models is killed, neither one counts towards your break point yet. You have to remove both rider and horse in order to count as a slain model towards breakpoints. So you could have 4 wargs dead and 4 riders dead, and if all 8 of those total models came from different riders and different wargs, you still technically haven't killed anybody for a breakpoint, and that is very important. So when making strikes against warg riders, it might be a good idea to make sure you save a strike or two to try and take a warg out. I won't lie, I've had many a time where I've gone to fight like a warg rider or an enemy, on a warg that's a hero like Gothmog, and I've thrown all my strikes at the like Gothmog, and I've killed him, and I'm like, yeah, and then my opponent's like, oh, wait a minute, nope, courage check with the warg, courage warg passed with a 9 because they're courage 2, and you only need a 10 to pass. And I'll be like, well, shit, there goes my heroic combat. So it is important to remember that when fighting warg models specifically, because warg riders, if you kill the rider, the warg has a chance to stay. Yes, it's only 33%, but you never know. So, all right, guys, that's Cavalry. That was a little bit longer of a video than I wanted to go with. I'm sorry, but I think I gave you guys some good examples as well as the rules, and that's kind of what I'm looking for with these videos, to give you some good examples of what to do. How to use the rules I'm talking about in them. If you'd prefer me just to kind of cover the rules, I can. Leave a comment below about that, but I think most folks like hearing examples of how these rules work. So until next time, everyone, please take care, have fun, enjoy Tolkien's Legendarium and its extreme, and I will see you next time on a Tolkien Fanatics video.